Once upon a time, in the early weeks of winter, there was a commotion in the chimney of a house called Mackin. This house was an old house, over 100 years old, and in all those years it had never had a visitor like the one who fell into the fireplace that night. Lucky for the visitor, the fireplace was not lit. Otherwise, he would have scorched his bushy little tail. Unfortunately, the poor creature did bonk his noggin on the firewood, falling in a heap on a rug.
Ouch, that hurt.
He stood up, clutching his head. When he regained his balance, he looked around the room.
Where am I?
You are in the parlor of Mackin House.
What's a Mackin house?
It used to be a home, a place where people lived. Now it is a museum, a place where artifacts are kept and put on display. Do you know what an artifact is?
No, sir.
An artifact is an important, historical, or culturally relevant object made by a human being. They are usually very old things.
What kind of artifact are you?
I am a clock.
And what do you do?
I tell the time, but my gears and cogs do not turn as well as they once did. So now I am just a part of the decorations. The clock sighed.
You look really festive, though. What do you do for fun?
I watch the people who visit the house, and I listen to their stories. I guess you could say I am a keeper of tales and time. What is your story, little friend? How did you come to be in this house?
Well, I couldn't sleep, so I went for a bit of a walk, which turned into a hop, skip, and a jump onto the roof of Mackin House. This chimney was a lot of fun to climb, much easier than other chimneys. I was at the top when a nasty owl tried to get me. I ducked and slipped. That's how I fell down the chimney, and here I am. How did you get in this house?
That is a long story, little friend.
I like stories. I also like exploring. This is my first time in a house. Isn't that exciting?
It is. Why don't you do a little exploring and come back to me? Maybe then I will tell you the story of how I came to be in this house.
Why can't you tell me the story now?
It takes me a long time to wind up, especially when it comes to telling stories. I like to have all the details sorted before the telling begins. The squirrel turned around with a huff. His disappointment about the story vanished as soon as he laid his eyes on a tall and wide wooden thing across the room. It had lots of white teeth in a nice straight row. The squirrel's restless legs zoomed him forward, and he climbed up the wood to get a better look at the teeth. Hey, that tickles.
Oh, sorry. I didn't mean to tickle you.
That's okay, little fella. You know, I've seen a lot of critters just like you out that there window.
Really? Have you seen my cousin Nutella? She's got the fluffiest tail in Millardville.
You know, I think I know just the squirrel you're talking about. She's the one with the tail that looks like a dandelion, right?
That's her. Can I ask you a question? What do you eat with all your teeth?
Oh, these aren't teeth, pal. These are keys. The squirrel scratched his head. He had seen keys before in the hands of humans, but he had never seen keys like these before.
What do they unlock?
I guess you could say they unlock music.
Music? You mean like when I hit acorn hats together?
Sort of. Would you like to sing a song with me?
I only know squirrel songs.
Well, let me teach you something new then.
Wow! Can I try playing your keys?
Sure thing, pal. The squirrel hopped from one key to the next, across the piano and back.
That was fun.
I'm sure with some practice you could learn the whole song. If you thought that was a hoot, you should head over to my good friend Grammy the Gramophone.
Thanks for the song. What do I call you?
I'm called a piano.
Thanks, Mr. Piano.
The squirrel crossed to the rug to the opposite corner from the piano.
Miss Grammy?
Yes, sugar.
Mr. Piano says you play music too, but you don't have any keys.
That's because I'm a gramophone, honey. All I need to play music is this vinyl record and this needle.
How does that work?
Just watch. The vinyl record started to spin, and the needle arm moved down until it touched the record. An old jazz tune began to play, and the squirrel couldn't help but tap his foot along to the music.
I've never heard anything like this before.
Isn't it wonderful? It's great dancing music. The squirrel danced with Grammy the Gramophone for so long that a rumble growled in his little stomach. It rumbled so loud it could be heard over the music. Oh my, sounds like you could use a snack, my friend. The squirrel rubbed his belly with his paws.
Yeah, but I don't know where to get food in a house.
Oh honey, all you gotta do is head over to the kitchen and you'll find something.
Where's the kitchen?
It's on the other side of the house, sugar, but you gotta go to the dining room first. Grammy lifted her needle to point to the open doors across the room. There was a large table in the center of the other room.
Thanks, Miss Grammy.
No problem, honey. Now off you go. The squirrel hopped across the parlor into the dining room. Even though he was a hungry little squirrel, a giant egg-shaped thing with wheels caught his eye. It looked very familiar to him, and he hurried over to get a better look.
Hi there. My name is Dolly. It's nice to meet you, Dolly. What are you? I've seen something like you before outside with wheels and everything. I don't have wheels, silly. Yes, you do. I'm looking at them with my own 2 eyes. Oh, I see. You think I'm the pram. It's also called a baby stroller.
A small head of a doll peered over the edge of the stroller.
You're cute. Can I hug you?
Before the squirrel could respond, a rattling sound startled him, followed by a high-pitched voice. Not so fast, rodent! The squirrel turned in time to see another thing with wheels with a flat top rattling. The voice belonged to a shiny metal pot on top of the cart. I will not have you getting your filthy little paws on the artifacts. Don't you know the museum is closed? Who let you in here?
The clock said I could explore the house.
Of course he did. He can't keep time, so I guess he can't keep watch either. I should kindly ask you to exit the museum at your earliest convenience, if you please, rodent.
I'm sorry. I accidentally fell down the chimney, but I'm awfully hungry, and the gramophone said I could find a snack in the kitchen.
Hungry, you say? Well, I can't in good conscience leave you with an empty stomach. It is against my very nature. Off you go, then.
Thank you.
The squirrel turned to move towards the kitchen, but the teapot piped up again. Before you go, my furry guest, if I spot the slightest smudge of dirt on the floor, or if I find a single artifact out of place, I will have no choice but to escort you out. The squirrel gulped. For a moment he forgot all about his hunger, as a brief wave of fear washed over him.
Okay. What do I call you?
I am a teapot, furry guest. A container for hot water, flavored with tea leaves.
I'll head into the kitchen now if that's all right with you.
The squirrel carefully tiptoed his way into the kitchen. As soon as the squirrel was out of the teapot's line of sight, the squirrel let out a sigh. I take it the teapot gave you what for, eh? The squirrel turned his head up to a funny-looking wooden box on the wall. It was much smaller than the gramophone.
What are you?
I'm a telephone.
You're not gonna give me what for, are you?
Not at all, little guy. I'm nothing like that hoity-toity old teapot.
Phew. Is this the kitchen?
Why, yes it is.
The gramophone told me the kitchen is where all the food is kept. I'm a little hungry, you see, and I could use a snack. Do you know where I can find one?
Well, I don't eat much myself. You'd better ask some of the other artifacts in this room, like the washing machine just around the corner in the pantry. The telephone pointed toward the pantry, and the squirrel hurried over and around to a big metal tub on wooden legs.
Do you know where I can find a snack?
The only things I eat, dear, are laundry and water.
Does laundry taste good?
To me it does, but I think it would be a bit too much fiber for you.
Do you know who else I could ask about finding food?
You ought to ask the icebox. He is the keeper of food.
Where is Mr. Icebox?
He is over by the root cellar, my dear.
All righty. Thank you.
You're very welcome, dear.
The squirrel hopped over to the icebox.
Excuse me, Mr. Icebox. Do you have any food?
100 years ago, I would have had some food for you, little guy. Unfortunately, it's the refrigerator's job to keep food cold and fresh nowadays. You know who would know more about food? The oven. The people who take care of this place cook all kinds of goodies and treats in there all the time. The squirrel's tail perked up.
Where is this great oven?
They're right behind you, buddy.
Thank you, Mr. Icebox.
No problem, kid. The squirrel turned around and hopped closer to a massive, black machine-looking thing. It looked sort of like a big black bear to the squirrel.
Excuse me? Oh, great oven?
Yes, small one.
The oven's voice was so powerful, it almost blew the squirrel backwards.
Jeepers! I was wondering if you knew where I could find some food. I'm awfully hungry, and I would be ever so grateful if you could lend me a little snack.
Do you see the table before you? Up on the counter, the squirrel could see the top of the table in the center of the kitchen. In the table's center was a platter with delicious-smelling treats on it.
Wow! Look at those goodies!
These are the treats the people of this house created earlier this day. You may take one treat to fill your small belly. Take only one. I will be watching. The squirrel gave himself a running start before he leapt over onto the kitchen table. He was so excited. His nose was full of wonderful smells, and his mouth was watering. For a moment, he wondered how he could possibly take just one treat.
These look so yummy.
The squirrel took a treat and sat down to nibble away at it. The treat was magnificently delicious. It was one of the best things he had ever eaten in his life. Once he was done, he let out a little burp and rubbed his belly.
Thank you, oh great oven. I ought to head back to Mr. Clock now that I have had a snack.
You are welcome. The squirrel's tail sagged when he realized the way back to the parlor was through the kitchen. The squirrel did not want to encounter that mean old teapot again.
Oh, peanuts! However will I get back to Mr. Clock?
Don't worry. If you take that hallway and hang a left, you'll get right back to the parlor in no time.
Wow! Thank you, Mr. Telephone.
No worries, buddy. The squirrel hopped through the doorway and down the hall. He turned left through a larger doorway and found himself back in the parlor. It sounds like you had quite a little journey. I am sorry the teapot was harsh with you. I have been at odds with the teapot for a long while now. The teapot can be a little hot-tempered. Are you ready to hear my story?
Absolutely.
And so the squirrel sat down in front of the clock and listened to its story. How it was crafted into the shape it is in today, and how it came to live in Mackin House. When the clock was done the story, it told the squirrel of a window with a broken lock in the bathroom that he could push open and exit the house. The squirrel said goodbye to all his new friends in the parlor before he followed the clock's directions. He entered the bathroom and climbed up the wall to the window. He pushed against the glass with all his might until the rusty hinges gave way. The squirrel was outside once more in the cold winter air. He zoomed to the nearest tree, happy to be in nature again. When he returned to his home that night, he fell fast asleep and dreamt of treats and all the artifacts he had met, all dancing to the jazz music of the gramophone. The end.